Tom, many of your books, you've had 16 of them, will wind up on the bestseller list. And one of your books called Analytics at Work is billed as, may I read, a how-to guide for developing an analytical capability in your company and putting it to work. IT execs are peer-based decision makers. Could you give a couple of examples of companies who have used analytics to outcompete their rivals?
Sure. So in that book, we talked a fair amount, for example, about Humana, a company in the health insurance industry, has some pretty aggressive competition from an analytical standpoint, and United Healthcare, some of the Blue Cross Blue Shield organizations are getting more aggressive in that regard. So the CEO of Humana, Mike McAllister, read the book Moneyball and liked the idea of competing on the basis of data and analytics. So he started to build their capabilities, brought in some quantitatively focused analysts, focused them in part on the traditional things that health insurers focus on, the more financial, actuarial kinds of things, but also created a whole new group doing customer-oriented analytics and even consumers, because that industry is moving much more in a consumer-oriented direction. And at the same time started some new data programs. They were having people count their number of steps that they took every day, and together with that and body mass index. Physical steps, yeah. If you combine that with body mass index, you can actually have a fairly good prediction of whether somebody's at risk for getting diabetes. So, and of course that's expensive to Humana and not so good for the patient either, for the customer. So they started to do a lot of work to try to head off some of these really tough diseases at the pass, if they could, and prevent them before they actually took place. So
Humana's done it right. Yeah. What are common causes of companies that don't use analytics in the correct way at work? What are some of the telltale signs that you as a consultant coming in saying, yeah, I know why?
Sure. Well, I had a model that I came up with. I call it the Delta model. You have to have a catchy acronym for everything these days. It's D for data, E for enterprise focus, L for leadership, T for targets, and A for analysts. And notice there is no T for technology in there. I think a lot of people tend to think, oh, I buy the software, I put in a data warehouse, that's pretty much all I need. But it's actually a much broader set of capabilities than that. So I think the biggest mistake is probably assuming that technology by itself will solve the analytical problem. And then of course you can focus on a problem that doesn't really matter that much to your business and be off target in that regard.
So if you think of a pie shape, and I'm giving you two slices in terms of people versus technology, in terms of getting analytics right at work, what % would you give to people versus technology?
Well, I'd give more attention to the people. I mean, you need the technology, of course. You can write a check for it in most cases and get a pretty capable technology environment. It's much harder, I think, to recruit the best people. There aren't that many of them around. Even traditional quantitative analysts are in short supply. So I think you'd have to spend more attention on the people. The money might be fairly even between the two, but more of your time and energy would have to go on the people side.
The human side. You mentioned healthcare, Tom, with Humana and what have you. Are there any verticals that you've seen in your work that are underusing or undervalued the use of analytics in their particular vertical? So is there any one vertical, several verticals that might pop out?
Yeah, I mean, healthcare has not had a lot of good data in the past. It's starting to change. We're spending a lot of taxpayer dollars to get better electronic medical records and so on. So I think that one's going to come up. There are industries that I kind of view as underachievers. They have a lot of data, but they don't do much with it. And I think telecom probably falls into that category. Massive amounts of data about who we call and what shows we watch, whether it's cable or landline or cell phone. Only scratch the surface at most. They treat all their customers more or less the same way, somewhat badly. So there is, I think, a real opportunity for that industry to get a lot better.
So, of course, Google and some of the others, that's their business. Are there what verticals are doing, in your mind, a really good job at analytics?
Well, I think financial services were amongst the early adopters and are quite good at it. A lot of consumer-oriented travel services companies, you know, the Marriotts, the airlines were somewhat good at it and were pioneers. They've kind of fallen by the wayside in terms of continual innovation and keeping up.
Retail?
Retail is gotten a lot better. They used to be below consumer products companies in terms of their analytical sophistication, but they've got the data, and because of that and because of their investment in people, I think they're well ahead of most consumer products firms.
So Tom Davenport, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you taking time out of being visiting professor at Harvard Business School, in addition to your other responsibilities at Babson College. We're glad you came by and visited us today and tell us all about analytics at work.
My pleasure. A lot of fun.